60 years ago, the notion that Europe's fate is in Germany's hands now would have been alarming. However, times have drastically changed, and Germany's role in Europe is now viewed quite differently. Let's explore how this transformation unfolded and what it means for Europe today.
Welcome to TFI Global, the antidote to mass delusion.
60 years ago, the notion that Europe's fate is in Germany's hands now would have sent chills down many spines. The early 20th century wars had ingrained a deep-seated belief among Europeans that German dominance was dangerous. Even though Western Germany was a NATO stalwart during the Cold War, the alliance was designed to ensure Germany never got too powerful or independent. NATO's first Secretary General famously stated that the alliance's purpose was to, quote, keep the Soviet Union out, the Americans in, and the Germans down. This sentiment lingered for a very long time. Margaret Thatcher even opposed German reunification after the Berlin Wall fell, fearing a powerful Germany in the heart of Europe. But a lot can change in half a century. The US, once the guarantor of European stability, is now considered the world's most unpredictable superpower. The potential return of Donald Trump to the presidency could mark the end of US support to Ukraine and a significant pullback from NATO and the transatlantic alliance. A recent Politico report highlighted some critical insights. Trump is unlikely to quit NATO outright, according to former Trump national security officials and defense experts likely to serve in a second term. However, even if he doesn't officially leave, NATO might not survive another Trump presidency unscathed. To keep the US involved, Trump would expect European countries to significantly boost their NATO spending and adopt a quote-unquote radical reorientation of NATO. The US would maintain its nuclear umbrella over Europe, but the bulk of infantry, armor, logistics, and artillery would shift to European hands. Parts of this plan were outlined in a February 2023 article by the Trump-affiliated Center for Renewing America, with more details emerging since then. This shift would involve substantially downsizing America's security role, stepping back from being the primary provider of combat power in Europe and only providing support in the times of crisis, explained a senior advisor to Russell Vought, expected to hold a senior role in a second Trump administration. Quote, "We can't be doing 10 times what the Germans are doing anymore, and we have got to be prepared to be tough with them. There's got to be consequences." End of quote. Former Trump official Elbridge Colby said, quote, "We want NATO to be active, but we want it to be with the Europeans in the lead. The United States does not have enough military forces to go around. We cannot break our spear in Europe against the Russians when we know the Chinese and Russians are collaborating and the Chinese are a more dangerous and significant threat." End of quote. This shift was anticipated. Trump or no Trump. Colby is right. The US's weakened defense industrial base and budget cannot support standing against both Russia and China. With China being the bigger threat, most of America's resources need to focus on East Asia. This is the harsh reality of balancing economic and military forces. As the US pulls back, Germany becomes Europe's most crucial economic and military player. With 83 million people, Germany is the EU's most populous state, commanding over a fifth of the EU's GDP and about a quarter of its manufacturing output. Despite its economy being more manufacturing heavy than other European nations, Germany maintains higher living standards than other major European economies, including the UK. However, Germany isn't the EU's or NATO's leader. The EU has no single leader, and with the US disengaging, neither does NATO. But Germany's size and importance mean that if it does not step up, these organizations will drift aimlessly. Rudderless and inertial aptly described Europe's response to the banking and fiscal crisis of the early 2010s. German insistence on fiscal austerity delayed Europe's recovery. Most of the region has grown slower since the crisis, likely because Europe failed to act as swiftly as the US did. The same can be said about the European response to the growing Russian threat. Some smaller European countries like Poland are significantly increasing their defense spending, but Germany, despite its promises, has only marginally increased its defense budget, barely meeting NATO's 2% GDP spending commitment. This would suffice for peacetime, but Europe isn't at peace, and Germany shows no signs of mustering the much larger sums needed. Poland spends 5% of its GDP on defense, Russia more than 6%. Germany's defense industrial base is ramping up painfully slow. Leon Mangazarian expressed frustration with Germany's sluggishness in The Spectator, stating that without Germany taking a leading political and military role, Europe's defense won't hold. 100 billion euros for the military is peanuts compared to what is needed after decades of underspending. Scholz's government refused to make NATO's 2% GDP target for military spending legally binding. If German leaders were serious about defense, they would justify cutting butter for guns, saying Germany faces an existential threat. German military procurement moves at a glacial pace with backlogs for critical systems. Even if ordered, new equipment will take years to become operational. But Germany isn't even ordering. As Frank Horn, CEO of KNDS, which builds the Leopard 2 tank, pointed out, in the 1980s, West Germany had over 7,000 tanks and armored vehicles. Today, Germany has about 300 of them. In a sense, Germany is sleepwalking into disaster, dragging Europe with it. With America stepping back, Europe stands alone against Putin's Russia, if Putin wants to attack it. On paper, Europe outmatches Russia economically, demographically, and militarily. But without Germany leading, the reality will be even more disastrous.